rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events, this is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. Well, we've had a couple things in the news, one of which seems that the partisanship has decided to start to hit for the America 250 founding. Anyway, and hi, David, over on Facebook. Yeah, there's been some people who apparently have all of a sudden decided that they're going to cave to the woke mob. Yeah, it's a sad deal that they're doing it, especially for America's 250th anniversary. You know, there's never going to be another 250th anniversary. Period. So why would you necessarily cave to the wokeness and the idiots on the left and give up your time to shine in history? Yeah. Anyway, apparently it's more important for these idiots to have idiots follow them than it is to be a part of history regardless. So anyway, I've got a little bit on that. Also, there was a great piece in the New York Post with regards to rediscovering America and American patriotism, especially on the 250th anniversary of this great nation. So I've got that. Plus, I also am going to take a look at a founding document that not too many people, in fact, I would hazard a guess that very few people actually look at. We're going to take a look at that tonight and talk a little bit about it. But first, we must get on with getting on. And let's go ahead and start things off with, of course, the Pledge of Allegiance done tonight by none other than Definitely Not Karen. That's right, definitely not Karen. So if you are of mine, please stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one, like me. Place your hand over your heart and follow along with Definitely Not Karen as he recites the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And, of course, I thank you, Definitely Not Karen, for that wonderful rendition of the pledge. If you would like to hear your rendition of the pledge played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself reciting or performing the pledge in your style. Take that audio file, video file, whatever kind of file, and attach it to an email. Then address that email and send it off to me. Send it to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. And I will get you into the rotation. I have 24 of these out of 26. I'd like to get 26 by the end of 2026. So if you haven't done one, I would really appreciate it if you would do so and then send it in. And don't worry if I go over 26, that'll be just even all the better. But that being said, if you do it on your phone, you can use the share option. That's the S-H-A-R-E option. That's the share option, and you can share it to fans at AmericanPerspective.online. And I will get you into the rotation. Tonight's drink, yeah, I know, if Bonnie were here, she probably is, but if she was, or if she is, I haven't seen her in the chat yet. So if she is here, she'll get mad at me anyway. But tonight I'm doing the Mountaineer blend of straight bourbon whiskeys from Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So that's what's in the bottle. As you can see, it's a Fairly big bottle, brand new bottle. I mean, it's still the 750 milliliter. Okay, whatever. Anyway, and I'm drinking it out of the American Perspective logo glass, the sister to the It Takes Stones to Drink with Whiskey, given to me by none other than the fabulous Whiskey Warrior P1s that are out there, and created, of course, by BAM. BAM had it done for us, for me, from all the Whiskey Warriors. And there's the requisite stones in the bottom of the glass, of course. Congratulations to BAM. Her daughter, Z, got married yesterday. In fact, I think many of the Whiskey Warriors were actually preferring to watch the wedding over me. Anyway. All right, well, here we go. Requisite first sip. Mm-hmm. Ah, yes, that's smooth. Anyway. All right. Let's go on. No, Bam, it's fine. Trust me. Bam. Bam's like, she looks so beautiful. I'm sorry. To me. Yeah, well, don't worry about it. No, you guys believe me. I should be down at the, low end of the list. Family stuff is way up here, you guys, for you guys, and I'm down here, way down here in the bottom. I'm at the bottom of the list. But I do appreciate all the time that you guys have spent with me in doing this. All right. Let's get on with the headline sponsor tonight, and that is none other than the Institute on the Constitution. TheAmericanView.com is where you can go. You'll be presented with this wonderful page right here. They are a 501c3 nonprofit, and they have a mission. Their mission is to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education from a biblical worldview. They suggest, to help them out, restore the republic by doing these 3 steps. Number 1, obviously, is to pray. And if you want help in prayer, you can go to Heal Our Land Prayer Campaign, which is right here. It's the folded hands on the left-hand side of your screen. And you can go and take a look at that. Click on that, and you will be presented with the ability to put in your email address to get a daily prayer sent to your email box. You can pray with them every single day. Second thing, obviously, is to study. Well, they have several courses for which you may study from, but the first one that they recommend is the U.S. Constitution course. It's nationally recognized, 100% free, 100% online. You sign up right here above my head by putting in your first and last name and then your email address. Click the Get Lesson 1 free, and you are entered, registered. You will be sent 12 short lessons through 12 weeks. They'll send you one per week. The lessons are about 15, 20 minutes long, and they cover the United States Constitution and how it was formed and the importance and so on and so forth. There's just a whole bunch of information there. And then once you're done with that course, you can go and check out any of their other courses, as well as the ones that are live. By live, I mean in-person courses, and you can go and check all those out. You can also catch the CEO of the Institute on the Constitution, Massey Campos, at the Good homeschooling conventions, the GHC conventions. I think they're good. Of course they're good. But anyway, no, they're great. What am I saying? Anyway, that's what they call them. I think the GHC convention. And you can go and check him out. He goes and speaks. He'll be speaking at several of them throughout their time there. So go and check all of that out. And then you got to act. Of course, after you learn, you got to pass on all of your stuff And they suggest that you either donate or sponsor, become a member, or even better yet, become an instructor. You want to help them out by their grassroots education, become an instructor for them. There's a video here that they talk about how to become a IOTC instructor right there. And then they give you 5 tips for a successful class. This is all for you. They're not going to leave you hanging. They're going to help you out. They're going to make you go for it right there. And they also have a kit, an instructor kit they've put together that you can purchase and be able to educate yourself, equip yourself, and then go ahead and schedule a practice class in which they watch, and then you become a certified instructor. You can get that instructor kit by heading over to their shop. If you head on over to theamericanview.com, up in the upper right-hand corner, hit the shop button. You'll be over here where you can look at all of their courses, educational resources, self-evident apparel, their instructor materials, and my personal favorite, the Legacy Library right above my head here. Woo-hoo. And my finger disappears, I know. Anyway, right above my head where they have all kinds of leather. I love my leather. All kinds of leather artifacts here. Oh, man. They have things like the leather Declaration of Independence. They have the leather Bill of Rights, the leather Magna Carta, the leather U.S. Constitution wall hanging. They have a leather pocket gospel set that look just like the fabulous, wonderful leather Constitution book. Yeah, that's right. It was the thing that I have in my hot little hand right here. It's the leather Constitution book. And this right here is the rounded cornered. My whiskey warriors call it the sexy rounded corners. Anyway, let's take a look at this thing. It's got 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are water and tear resistant. No cheap glue here, folks. This is stitched all the way through the pages and the leather binding all the way in the back. Yeah. Each, according to my Whiskey Warrior 3 Chevy, each rounded cornered Saddleback leather book contains actual Roman numerals, all of which are in ascending numerical order. And my Whiskey Warrior G tells me that it's Billy tasted, Billy approved, proves that this pocket Constitution is food for the soul. He says it's a good buy. He says good boy, meaning Billy. You'll understand in a minute. And my news chimes in with the words in the Constitution cause bowel dysfunctions for the left. You don't want to be behind them when they hold this thing, let me tell you. Anyway. Oh, this thing has got a 100-year warranty against materials and manufacturing defects, such that if you have a problem with this device, this gift, this fantastic book, anytime within that 100 years, you can send it back to the manufacturer and they will either fix it or replace it for free. It is buddy tested. May he rest in peace. Buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved, and my youngest Whiskey Warrior has confirmed the information contained within will get you will help you study for and achieve your civics badge in Scouts, along with your civics exam, which they don't apparently have anymore, and part of our problem. And it may also help with your naturalization test. So go to theamericanview.com, go to the shop, click on Legacy Library, and you'll find this right there. These things are fantastic. Less than $20, man. You can carry it around in your pocket and show it off to everybody. Maybe buy more when it comes around to Christmas and hand them out. You know, I got one extra one here that I think is now tagged for my little granddaughter as far as when she is going to receive it sometime. One of the greatest documents that has ever been created in this world. It's up there, but not quite as high, of course, as the Bible, but it's up there. It is up there. Anyway, head on over to theamericanview.com. Check out all of their stuff. everywhere. Check out their shop, check out their information, check out everything. And I thank them for being a sponsor of the show. That's theamericanview.com is where you go to get all that fantastic information. All right. Oh, wait. Wrong button. Wrong button. All right. I have, of course, the fan favorite. This is a fan favorite section, or segment. The segment, which is On This Day in American History. And for On This Day in American History, we read from the American Patriots Almanac, written by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. It is chock full of all kinds of factoids and information about this country that we call home. Now, last week on Memorial Day, I actually read the Memorial Day entry. Well, that happens to turn out to be the May 30th entry. So we're going to bump forward a day, and I'm going to do June 1st's entry just because I don't want to recap Memorial Day because we weren't actually on Memorial Day. Memorial Day is the last Monday in May, and in the book it is May 30th as being the last Monday. Well, that's where May 30th actually was where it started before the government decided to change it. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next day here. So for June 1st, we're going to talk about Don't Give Up the Ship. During the War of 1812 between the United States and Britain, side note, some people consider that our second revolution. Anyway, Captain James Lawrence sailed in command of the 36-gun frigate, the USS Chesapeake. On June 1st, 1813, the Chesapeake engaged in the warship HMS Shannon near Boston in a ship-to-ship duel. Lawrence's crew was young and inexperienced, while the Shannon had one of the best trained crews in the Royal Navy. The British guns quickly cut away the Chesapeake's rigging, setting her adrift, and the King's men swarmed onto the American vessel. Within a few minutes, Captain Lawrence was mortally wounded. As he was carried below deck, he gave his last order, "Tell the men to fire faster! Don't give up the ship!" Despite the captain's exhortation, the Chesapeake was soon captured. Lawrence died a few days later, leaving behind a wife and daughter. When fellow officer Oliver Hazard Perry heard of Lawrence's death, he had his friend's dying words stitched onto a large blue banner which he flew from his flagship, the USS Lawrence, which was named for Captain Lawrence when he fought the British on Lake Erie in September of 1813. Perry's flag now hangs in a place of honor in Memorial Hall at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. The words it bears, "Don't give up the ship," have become a rallying cry of the United States Navy. And that, my friends, is on this day in American history. All right. Well, let me just start by saying if anybody has any questions with regards to the president's health and with regards to the president's cognitive screening tests, we have just received the president's doctor's report on the president's last physical. President Trump, at age 79, was showing no major health concerns and scored 30 out of 30 on the cognitive screening tests. His physician wrote a memo yesterday following the president's annual physical earlier in the week. The report came after Trump underwent his annual examination Tuesday at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. The memo cites President Donald Trump remains in excellent health, demonstrating strong cardiac, pulmonary, neurological, and overall physical function. Navy Captain Sean Barbarella, president's physician, wrote in the memo. He continues and says his demanding daily schedule, including multiple high-level meetings, public engagements, and regular physical activity, continues to support his overall well-being. Cognitive and physical performance are excellent. He is fully fit to carry out all the duties of the Commander-in-Chief and Head of State. Now, the evaluation included some other diagnostic studies, laboratory tests, and consultations with 22 specialty providers. Donald Trump turns 80 next month, June. He is 75 inches tall and, according to the doctor, weighs 238 pounds. He has a resting heart rate of 73 beats per minute, a blood pressure reading of 105/71, and an oxygen saturation level of 98% on room air, according to the report. Now, I'm just going to tell you right now, I don't know about his weight. I really don't. But I can tell you that 73 beats per minute for a resting heart rate is not that bad. 70 is average. A blood pressure reading of 105/71 is low. Average is 120/80. And an oxygen saturation level of 98% means that his lungs are doing their job. Their job. Okay? And, I'll just say that there's... the president may be taller than me, but I weigh more than he does. Anyway, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm in shape. Round is a shape, okay? Just saying. Anyway, the examination itself, according to the memo, did not identify any major health concerns. Now, he noted the scarring. Oh, hey, liberal idiots who are out there saying that the ear doesn't heal like normal people. Morons. Anyway, Barbarella noticed scarring on Trump's right ear from the gunshot wound that he suffered during the assassination attempt in Butler in 2024. Yeah, and yet people are like, no, that was ketchup. It was faked. It was a blood capsule like they use in the WWE. Yeah, morons. He's got scarring there. Anyway, the physician also reported as a part of this the mild lower leg swelling, which he said had improved from the previous year. When you get older, yeah, your lower legs start to swell some. Trump also underwent some neurological examinations that demonstrated normal mental status, including a cognitive screening in which he scored 30 out of 30, according to the report. Barbarella also noted that bruising on the president's hand is consistent with minor soft tissue irritation related to frequent handshaking in the setting of aspirin use for cardiovascular prevention. Basically, it sounds like the president is on an aspirin regimen to keep him from going into cardiac arrest. When you get older, it is true, doctors will put you on an aspirin regimen. So, anyway, The physician reported no significant abnormalities in Trump's laboratory results. So, by the way, he also the doctor also highlighted Trump's lifelong abstinence from alcohol and tobacco. I don't have that. Sorry. I don't have that lifelong abstinence from tobacco and alcohol. I'm gonna ride off into the sunset happy. Anyway. Speaking of which, right here in the hand. Anyway, all right. According to the memo, Trump takes 3 medications. 2 of them are for cholesterol management, and then the aspirin, of course, for cardiovascular preventions. So, anyway, yeah. He is fine, leftists. He's perfectly fine. All right. Well, moving into the file that says Democrats have never met a tax that they didn't like. Let me just point this out. A congressional progressive caucus has pushed for a tax designed to fund a jobs program through taxing AI. Okay, let me see if I understand this correctly. The Progressive Caucus at the federal level wants to tax something that is ethereal in nature, artificial intelligence, in order to fund a jobs program, which is unconstitutional because a jobs program does not show up under Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. You know, if you had a pocket constitution, you'd be able to read this and reference it while I'm on the program, because I refer to it a lot. Anyway. I can't believe this. So, Congressional Progressive Caucus Chairman Greg Casar, or Casar, I guess, I don't know. He's a Democrat from Texas. That's pretty sad. Called on his fellow lawmakers to levy a tax on companies that execute AI-driven layoffs, arguing that the tax revenue should fund a jobs program. Oh, yes, similar to the one that FDR, another Democrat who actually extended the Great Depression another 12 years, according to many historians. Yeah, spearheaded a jobs program during the Great Depression. So, yeah. And by the way, they're doing this, believe it or not, they're doing this because of a prediction by a AI entrepreneur and researcher by the name of Dario Amodei, M-A-O-D-E-I. Anyway, this guy, Dario, I'm going to call him, predicted that U.S. unemployment levels are going to rise to Great Depression levels within the next 5 years. And Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates had an opinion that humans will not be needed for most things in 10 years. Okay, first of all, I'm just going to point something out. Microsoft founder Bill Gates at one time said you would not need over a certain size of memory or CPU. We've gone way past that prediction. He was like, oh yes, homeowners won't need more than this size of CPU. And believe me, it was an astronomically low number. And that got blown out of the water like within 6 months after he had predicted it. So don't sit here and, tell me that these people are, Nostradamus prognosticators and take care of this. Anyway, the congressman who, again, these are Democrats. They're idiots. They're complete, utter freaking morons. In fact, speaking about that, side note, sorry, I'm going to take us on a train. So we're going to hop off the tracks here real quick. There was a guy on Facebook who dared to basically tell me that, he dared to basically tell me that education, that the Democrats, that in the Democrat Party are much more highly educated because they go off to college and get college degrees. Now, look, I'm not going to disparage a college degree. I'm really not. Somebody gets a college degree. I have a college degree. I mean, there's a lot of people who have a college degree. I got mine later in life. I didn't go directly out of, school. As soon as I got out of high school, I basically kind of bounced around a little bit trying to decide what I wanted to do. I did go to college for a little bit. Didn't fit me, so I moved on and I started working in the working world, and that didn't really suit me too much, and so I ended up going into the military. Greatest thing that ever happened to me as far as that's concerned. But the thing about it is that these morons seem to think that just because you go off to some college company or college and get a degree, you could get a degree in basket weaving, and these dumbasses seem to think that you're more quote-unquote educated than the standard Republican-following conservative Christian who definitely has more in the way of common sense and logic and reason and critical thinking skills than any of these idiots that are coming out of these Democrat indoctrination institutions. I'm sorry. Here's what a degree. I'm just going to lay it out for you. Here is exactly what a degree demonstrates. And honestly, companies look at degrees nowadays like they used to look at high school diplomas. They are literally not really worth the paper that they're written on, but it does demonstrate that you can do two things. One, it demonstrates that you can put your mind to something and complete it. You can start a task and finish it. That's number one. And number two, it demonstrates that you can regurgitate the information that is pushed to you by your instructors. That's it. Honestly, that's all a college degree shows you. That's it. Everything else is irrelevant because you're going to tend to forget all of that stuff that you learned in college more than likely. Statistics demonstrate that hardly anybody, there's a few, but hardly anybody that goes into something that is not directly relatable to a specific job, i.e. chemistry, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, architecture, any of the STEM places, that if you go in and just go for like a liberal arts degree or a political science degree or an English degree or whatever, chances are you're never going to use that in the real world. You're not going to land a job because, again, 9 times, well, I won't say 9 times, but the majority of the time, the only thing that the people care about who are hiring you is, yes, you did a college degree. You showed that you could put your mind to a task or a goal and complete that goal. Also, that you're a good person by showing up, that you continually show up, and you did for a minimum of 4 years or whatever it is that you do, whatever degree you've got. That's all it shows. That's all that those people really care about for the most part. Unless, of course, you're in some sort of a very specialized kind of program. Like I was saying, the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. If you're in one of those programs, oh yeah, everything that you're learning, you're going to be using when you decide finally to get out. Same thing with like veterinary school or being a doctor or whatever. But it's all the generic degrees that the vast majority of people go into and go for that, they're not going to matter. I mean, your liberal arts degree. Yeah, I got a liberal arts degree. Okay, wonderful. So you can recite, Shakespeare and Plato. Totally irrelevant in the real world. But, I mean, hey, you could read, you could recite it, you could regurgitate it. So you showed up for 4 years and you received your certificate of completion, which is your graduation document. And it sounds like I'm disparaging all this, and I'm really not, because it does prove something. However, the flip side of that is, in today's day and age, it also proves that you've spent 4 years as a captive audience to leftist lunatic instructors. Because the vast majority of instructors and professors in anything outside of the science, technology, engineering, and math degrees are 90% plus leftist lunatics. Almost every single one of them. And oh my God, if you you want to come out with like a gender studies degree or, in interpersonal social relations. Yeah, that's really going to get you somewhere. Why do you think people who come out of college are getting all pissed off? They've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to get what is essentially a worthless degree. And guess what? You can ask just about any of your older baristas at like Starbucks or any other coffee stand. I can almost guarantee you, on almost every single shift, you will find somebody who has one of those worthless degrees and spent over, $100,000 in order to achieve it. Now I'm sitting here just, somebody's going to say, you're disparaging baristas. No, I'm not. I'm just, seriously, I'm not. I'm just giving you facts. I'm giving you reality. I went to school. I'm in the technical skills by trade. I'm part of the technology part. I only do this as a side. This is my side hustle. I only do this as a side piece. And I got to tell you, my technology degree, the degree that I got, now granted, again, I went to a university that was geared toward working adults, so it's not like your typical 4-year institution. However, that being said, the only thing that my degree has done is be able to be a line item on my resume. Now, there are some things that I gained out of it, some understanding out of it. And as that understanding came into play, yes, I have used a little bit, a small amount in my job. But the reality of it is that I haven't built a single database in years since school. I haven't programmed in years since school. And I have no desire to do those things, but they were part of the curriculum. And so because they were part of the curriculum, I was able to finish them. There's a few others, but seriously, I mean, it was part of the process. Now, during my time in, and oh my gosh, we are like way off the tracks here, but during my time in college, I had a person who was a part of my team in the database class who actually built databases. And he pretty much told us that the school was teaching us principles and foundational subjects about databases, but that it was all outdated. So, yeah. Anyway, Oh, I'm being asked by 3 Chevy. Well, let's see. We had, back in high school, I actually studied Pascal and BASIC. In the college class, I studied C, C Sharp, C++, and I think it was Visual Basic was the other one that I studied. So, yeah. Somebody wanted to, I've got books right over here I'm in the studio here about Python, and I have barely touched them. I have no desire to program at all. Anyway, I did have a book at one point that had COBOL in it, which believe it or not, all the banking systems or most of the banking systems run COBOL, and COBOL is like a dead language now. So if you can program in COBOL, oh my gosh, you could pretty much write your ticket. Anyway, as I was like totally off subject here, but I mean, we're sitting here and we're talking about taxing. No, not Monty Python. Python, the scripting language. Anyway, yes. Yeah, the Knights of Knee. That's all I got to say. Anyway, we were talking about taxation and AI-driven layoffs. Yeah, these people, they're like, oh, yeah, we want to tax something. Well, yeah, speaking of taxing, all right, we're going to move on. We're back on track now. Speaking of taxing, Governor Newsom, now I don't know if you recall, but there was a proposal put out by Donald Trump here not too long ago. He set up a what was it called? Anti-weaponization fund. Anti-weaponization fund. And let me just put it to you like this. The Anti-Weaponization Fund was put together by the Department of Justice in order to allow people to exercise their constitutional right to let me see if I can remember what it's actually called. The proper phrasing. It's in it's in the First Amendment to the Constitution here. And I got to get the phraseology correct. Petition their government for a redress of grievances. What this anti-weaponization fund was going to do was have money set aside by the government for anybody who was had a politicization of the Department of Justice going after them under the Biden years, and technically any other time past or since by the government. Well, Governor Gavin Newsom, hair gel himself, he could probably squeeze his hair out and get enough oil to take care of California's gasoline problem. But that being said, Gavin Newsom announced that he was going to put together a proposal to 100% tax all funds that were received by California or Californians from the Justice Department's Anti-Weaponization Fund. Well, Scott Bessent, and this guy really does not give the credit that he actually deserves, I'm just going to say. He has a response for Gavin Newsom with regards to all of this. I mean, remember, a Democrat has never found a tax that he didn't like. Let's take a listen to the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, and how he responds to Gavin Newsom's proposal.
Sir, Governor Gavin Newsom has floated this idea of a 100% state tax on Californians who receive money from President Trump's anti-weaponization fund. Your response to the governor's call for 100% tax?
There's no cure for it. Okay. Thank you all.
For those of you that didn't catch that, he basically said there's no cure for stupid. Yeah, I would agree. There is no cure for stupid. And so, anyway, the Governor Newsom's office quickly responded, and a spokesperson for Governor Newsom, Hairgel himself, said he told Town Hall the response was Slow Scott would know. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. By the way, too, Governor Newsom. Governor Newsom also went and put together some sort of a bill, I guess, and signed it into law that basically states that the federal government can't put federal agents at polling places. I guess I'd like to understand how that is going to play out with the idea of the supremacy clause. But California isn't the only place, of course. You know, Democrat strongholds such as New York and Connecticut have similar proposals that are being floated around. In fact, Assembly member Alex Bores, or Borres, however it's pronounced, Bores, who's a Democrat in New York, he posted on X on Tuesday. He goes, "Hey, I just introduced the Anti-Insurrectionist Act in New York. It's simple. If you're a New Yorker who takes from Trump's illegal January 6th slush fund," okay, first of all, it's not a slush fund. Second of all, it's so far not illegal. Third, it has nothing to do with January 6th. Anyway, he continued and said, New York will tax 100% of it. Yeah. Look, if you live in a Democrat state, and I do, and unfortunately, I'm just going to have to take the brunt of whatever is there. But if you live in a Democrat state, you might want to think about getting out. Yeah. Gavin Newsom's X account said, if you get a payout from Trump's January 6th slush fund, California will tax it at 100%. People who assault cops and overthrow democracy don't deserve a taxpayer-funded payday. Okay, wait a minute. So again, keep in mind, this is a fund that is set aside for the Department of Justice, or within the Department of Justice, I should say, that has to deal with people suing the government. People suing the government, in other words, petitioning the government for a redress of grievances, a constitutionally protected right. Yeah, under Article 1, Section 8. All right. Well, Bessent, again, he is kind of an unsung hero in the administration. Well, Bessent has put out yesterday, he delivered a statement from the Trump administration with regards to its economic security doctrine. And in this, I just got to say, this guy's really freaking smart, okay? The address titled While America Slept, and it's timed for the nation's 250th anniversary, basically was a comprehensive intellectual accounting of how the post-Cold War consensus on trade, globalization, and industrial policy had, according to Scott Bessent, ended American sovereignty, and what the administration is attempting to do to reverse those policies. Now, you can find this thing. There's a link inside the article, the Breitbart article that talks about this, that takes you to the home.treasury.gov press release for May 29th. Here it is. Here's the press release. And, Yeah, he kind of like really lays it out. He talks about President Reagan himself understanding that renewal begins with reflection. He goes, one thing that makes our republic great, according to Scott Bessent, is that we don't hide from our mistakes. We learn from them, then we go on and do things better than we did before. That was Ronald Reagan. He continues to talk about economic security being national security, that a long time ago we did goods were cheaper overseas, and it did not matter whether the factories were going to go dark in places like Michigan, Ohio, or Pennsylvania. He's assuming, he said, we assumed, meaning the Americans, assumed that with the globalist economy, supply chains would always function smoothly, adversaries would always behave responsibly. Yeah, that's a fallacy. And that the invisible hand would correct vulnerabilities that too few in public life had the courage to confront. And while we had reassured ourselves with those assumptions, the risks kept piling up. He says somewhere we lost sight of a foundational principle. We've lost sight of a lot of foundational principles. Sorry, folks, but he says, he continues and says that previous generations understood instinctively. For a nation that cannot manufacture, mine, ship, or refine its goods gradually cedes its strength and sovereignty to others. He says that is a dangerous dependency for any country, and it is an unacceptable one for the United States. Yeah. Now, he talks about a series of mistakes that were made. One of them, some being bipartisan mistakes, others being ideological mistakes, and many of them being defended long after their costs became impossible to ignore. One of our mistakes, he claims, was treating trade policy as though it existed apart from national strategy. He says, we convinced ourselves that we could pursue commercial partnerships in one silo while maintaining security relationships in another, as if the world would honor these distinctions. They don't, I guarantee you. And he continues, I'm kind of skipping through here. You really should read the whole piece, I'm just saying. But he continues and he talks about, in the name of efficiency, we began to celebrate just-in-time delivery while neglecting just-in-case. And he points out that the pandemic did not create our brittle supply chains as much as it did to expose them. Here's part of the problem. We went through the pandemic, and even though the pandemic from a health perspective wasn't as big as things like, let's say the 1918 flu, Spanish flu, or some of the other global pandemics that we've had, it basically demonstrated that we as a country are subjected to the whole idea that globalist supply chains can turn on a dime. I mean, seriously, what are we going to do? What would America do? And keep in mind, this is part of the history of America. This is sort of what we're talking about here in terms of reconnecting with our founding. If you look at the history of America, in World War I and World War II, it wasn't until America actually turned its attention to the wars and started mass producing things. For an example, car factories for World War II changed into factories building tanks and bombs and things of that nature. If it weren't for the fact that we had all of that manufacturing here within the United States, we would potentially run out of bombs. Because us being supplied by other countries from a national security standpoint, us being supplied by other countries for things such as weapons and ammunition and any other kind of like war machine needed goods and services, food, clothing, anything that you can name out on the battlefield. If we cannot produce it here in the United States, that is what's called a risk. That is what's called a problem. That is what's called a serious challenge to our sovereignty. Because if we can't produce it here within our own borders, if we cannot create it here within our own borders, and we hand it off to people such as the Chinese, as an example. I mean, let's just take a quick, close look at every single electronic device that we have in our homes, in our hands, everywhere. 90% of them have a piece of Taiwanese technology, meaning chips, microchips, chipsets, Taiwanese manufactured circuit boards. Any one of them. You need to understand the criticality here. If China were to take over Taiwan, okay, the entire globe would suffer a problem. And it's not just consumer electronics problem. It's also all of our guidance systems. It's all of those fantastic things that we use, such as drone technology, such as missile defense systems, such as computer-aided weapons systems. Any of that, even going down to the point of nuclear systems. All of these things come from what is essentially a almost 100% single source provider. This is a problem, people. We need to be able to manufacture those things here in the United States, within our borders, securely. And we don't, as of right now. This is the drive, this is the point, this is the push that this administration has identified a weakness in our supply chain and has said, guess what? We need to stop this. We need to correct this problem. And unfortunately, here in the United States, what a lot of people don't seem to understand is that when you hand over manufacturing, i.e. creating products, and decide to make your entire economy built off of service-related industries. Now, we're not there in terms of the entire economy yet, but we're getting pretty damn close. When you start farming out your manufacturing and everything to overseas, supposedly cheaper components, you give up everything, because all it takes is for that supply line to fail. And if that supply line fails, guess what? You no longer have the capability to do the things that you need to do. We lose things like steel manufacturing, iron smelting, manufacturing of electronic chipsets, even down to the manufacturing of our pharmaceuticals. Our pharmaceuticals right now, many of it is coming from China. We create the patents, we create the product, we hand it over to China to mass produce because they can do it faster and cheaper. Not necessarily better, but faster and cheaper. Because they exploit their people to be able to do the things that normal people here in America can't, legally speaking. And so what ends up happening is you end up farming that out, and what happens? Well, if China decides to not send us any pharmaceuticals, what do you think is going to happen here? We're going to have people potentially dying because they can't get the medicines that are required. Or even better yet, China decides to poison all those medicines, and we are none the wiser. And they come in to our country, and all of a sudden, a whole bunch of people are dying for what is considered to be no reason, or a reason that we are unaware of. Yeah. See, Scott Bessent went through this whole thing, and I'm not going to read the whole speech, but you definitely need to read this. He went through the whole thing and did a very intelligent argument over the position that the Trump administration has been taking, especially things like the tariffs, things like trying to get manufacturing companies to come back to the United States, which is what tariffs are actually designed to do, is protect from exploitation, from foreign exploitation, protect our own manufacturing and supply lines and things of that nature here in the United States. Anyway, you should read this thing. I mean, it's probably about well, depending upon how fast you read, could be like a 15, 20 minutes kind of point here. So, yeah. And he touches on things like critical minerals, derivative products, strategic pharmaceutical ingredients reserve, which is what I was just mentioning or referencing, things of this nature. And it talks about not meaning that we don't necessarily reject things like inefficiency. We don't reject things like, retreating from the world, but engaging it on more strong, fair, sustainable terms, things like that, to shrink and avoid our vulnerabilities, to think of manufacturing and product development as a national strategic position, not so much from a standpoint of just a company getting rich. Anyway, read that. Read it through. It's a great piece. And I think a lot of people need to pay attention to it. All right, let me take a quick break here, and I want to talk to you, speaking of protecting yourself, protecting your money, protecting things like your investments. We've all noticed that, especially with the last administration, there was this newfound term, a thing called debanking, where the federal government stepped in and got rid of people's, basically made people's access to money just disappear. Things like the MyPillow guy, Mike Lindell, he got debanked. There were some other people that have been debanked. There have been, it's been growing as a tool being used by an over-weaponized government. Well, one thing that you may be able to do in order to protect yourself and diversify and hedge yourself is to think about diving into crypto. It says we hear a lot about crypto, but here's the part that most people miss. Crypto itself was created so that you could actually own and control your money. After the 2008 financial crisis, Bitcoin was designed as an alternative to banks. So instead of a bank holding your money, delaying transfers, or limiting access, you are in control. And if you've ever had to wait for a transfer to clear, you've felt that problem. Now, fast forward to today. Everyone has heard of crypto, but getting started still feels complicated. That's exactly why Rumble Wallet was created. It takes all the complexity and makes it simple. Choose what you want, whether it's Bitcoin, dollar-backed stable coins, or even digital gold that is backed by real gold. There's no complicated setup. It connects with a process called MoonPay, so you can use your credit card, debit card, bank card, and be up and running in minutes. Once you set up, you can even support your favorite Rumble creators like me directly without any additional fees being taken by the platform. So do this now. Scan the QR code. I always do this wrong. Scan the QR code that's right here on the screen, or click the link in the description and download the Rumble wallet. You can also go to wallet.rumble.com. That's wallet, WALLET.rumble, RUMBLE.com, to get more information about this diversification tool that you can help hedge your bets against a collapsing economy. So go to wallet.rumble.com, and from there you can set up your wallet, tap buy, and you're in the game. It's just a few minutes. You can go from hearing about crypto to actually owning some, and I would seriously take a look at that purchase of digital gold backed by real gold option. Go to wallet.rumble.com or click on the QR code, and once you are there, download the Rumble wallet and get yourself going. Again, I wouldn't necessarily use it for everything, but it's a diversification tool. If you look at it as a tool rather than an all-in-one, you should seriously take a look at this. So go to wallet.rumble.com for details. Click on the QR code, or even just download the app directly from the Google Play or App Store, either one, and get yourself started in diversifying some of your money into different options so that you're never left without any cash. Since we're talking about, protecting yourself. Once again, go to wallet.rumble.com and check out all the details today. All right. Well, there's this big thing that's coming up. There's this big event coming up. It's called the 250th anniversary of this country. And all I got to say is that there was supposed to be several star-studded acts that were showing up for the Great American State Fair. One in particular, and this is kind of surprising, she's a country star, but it turns out that she actually, played for Obama, supported Obama, and so on and so forth. I don't know why. Toby Keith was actually a Democrat for a very long time, too. And that's the old school Democrats, what I'm talking about here. Okay. But anyway, country star Martina McBride decides to bail because she caved to the woke mob on the Great American State Fair. So she is now catching a bunch of hell from a bunch of her furious fans. Now, let me just explain something to you. Country music fans are generally conservative. I don't know very many country music fans who are on the left. However, that doesn't mean that there aren't country music acts, such as the Dixie Chicks, who they got rid of their name Dixie because, oh my God, it referenced the South. And so they ended up calling themselves the Chicks. And Natalie Maine, who, believe me, is not anywhere close to what she used to look like back in the 80s, actually 90s, I should say. But anyway, she has been very vocal and anti-American. So there are music fans that are out there. Oh, yeah, and I can't forget, thanks, Coco, Lady Antebellum, who became Lady, which, by the way, side note, here, we're off the tracks again. Side note, but the real Lady A plays on Walter Trout Blues Rock Radio. That's the real Lady A, the actual Lady A who sued Lady Antebellum when Lady Antebellum changed their name to Lady A, and she sued and won. So, anyway, yeah, she's the real Lady A. Anyway, if you want to check her out, go on over to tgrn.net. Yeah, side plug. Anyway, as I was saying, yeah. So apparently, the reason for Martina McBride stepping out is because she says it's too political. You're celebrating the anniversary of the greatest nation this world has ever seen, and that's too political. Okay. Whatever. McBride, in a very long Instagram statement, claimed that she was misled into believing the June 25th concert would be a wholesome, nonpartisan celebration of all 50 states, only to pull out once the details became clear, according to her. So, yeah. McBride said that she'd been blessed with the opportunity to be a voice for those who have felt like they didn't have one, adding that she is saddened that any fan who has been moved by my music may now feel like I'm abandoning the meaning behind those songs. Let's think about this for a second. You know, one of Martina McBride's greatest songs that's out there is Independence Day, which is a song about a woman who has a wife-beating husband, an abusive husband, who kills her husband on Independence Day. Yeah, anyway. All right. Whatever. I will never look at any Martina McBride song any the same way ever again. I'm just not. Same thing with like how I dumped the Dixie Chicks. Yeah, she's gone too. Or they're gone too. I don't even want to listen to them. Anyway. Thank you. I'll listen to like Lee Greenwood, Toby Keith, Creed Fisher, Aaron Lewis. I'll listen to those guys. Thank you very much. All right. Well, let's move on. Speaking of the 250th anniversary, there is a absolutely fantastic New York Post opinion piece by a guy by the name of Douglas Murray. And he puts out this piece where he talks about rediscovering American pride and gratitude on the 250th anniversary. Now, he talks about when he first moved to America, how he made a determined effort to read up on American history. And it's because of the fact that he is from Britain. And he basically is saying that, hey, when we learned, excuse me, when we learned about the American Revolution in Britain, it was basically viewed upon as a bad thing. Really. Anyway, he also pointed out that most people outside of this country are entirely ignorant of American history. Yeah, I've seen that before. There are several Canadians who claim that they know more about American history than Americans and then proceed to say things like the Electoral College was rooted in slavery, which is a misnomer for anybody who knows American history. The Electoral College had nothing to do with slavery. The part that they're pointing to is what is called the 3/5 Compromise, which was a compromise between the northern states and southern states to be able to count the southern states' slaves as 3/5 of a person, therefore making it so that the southern states have closer to equal representation in the House of Representatives when it was put together. Yeah. Anyway. I even had some idiot on Facebook tell me, oh no, the 3/5 Compromise made it so that the southern states had greater representation. No, it was actually to make it so that, because originally the census only counted free people, free citizens, not slaves. Slaves were considered property and therefore they weren't counted as people. And so what was going to happen is, because of the essentially freemen population, and again, they only counted men at first, but freemen population down in the South was much, much smaller than the industrialized North. They basically they basically wanted to have their slaves counted as people so that they could gain more representation. And the North said, no, we're not counting every single one of your slaves. They're not people. They don't what do you call it? They don't vote. So we're not going to count them in the apportionment section. And so, yeah, we're going to, okay, as a compromise, we'll count them as 3/5 of a person. So anyway, there you go. All right. I got away from this piece, but this piece, and boy, I'm doing a lot of off the tracks, off the rails stuff. Anyway. So, this piece, back to this opinion piece, man, he is sitting here and he's talking about if you're going to live in a country, you should make an effort to learn its history, according to him. And he has discovered how unpopular that view is. Now, he continues and he talks about one of the books that he was reading was Paul Johnson's A History of the American People. And it seized him from its opening lines that said, quote, "The creation of the United States of America is the greatest of all human adventures. No other national story holds such tremendous lessons for the American people themselves and for the rest of mankind." Now, he published that book, Johnson did, published that book in 1997. Before all of the woke revisionist history has come out. And this is part of where the title of today's show comes from. It's time for us to go back and relook at the originalist history, the original list of everything that we have. Because according to this opinion piece, he's like, well, sometime back in the 1990s onward, the country's story started to get retold in another light. There was greater emphasis on the way in which the Native Americans were treated. Trend grew for pulling down all those American leaders who had literally been put on pedestals. And there was a concerted effort to center the transatlantic slave trade as being at the heart, if not the foundation, of the American story, which we all know is false. Now, he does point out that all of those things are perfectly fine things to do. History is forever being written or rewritten, he says, added to and put in fresh context. However, he does say that sometimes when you do that, you just end up with things slanted in a new direction. And it's not actually the truth, which is exactly what the 1619 Project did. It was a bunch of crap. A bunch of crap. And what I'm sitting here saying, hey, we as Americans, we need to re-grasp our actual history. One of the things that you can do is learn the Constitution, learn the American Constitution, the proper way that it was done. Learn things like the Federalist Papers, read them, understand them. I have the Federalist Papers in I think 2 or 3 different formats here, in order for me to be able to research and bring to you the truth about America's founding. Now, I want to talk and take a second because most people only study the Declaration of Independence. Most people only study the United States Constitution. Most people focus on the well-known names of our history. The well-known names like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, John Adams, Samuel Adams, Patrick Henry, Paul Revere. But there's a guy who is a complete unsung hero. An unsung hero of the United States. his documents, documents that he wrote, and the influence that he had prior to the writing of the Declaration of Independence, prior to the writing of the Constitution. For those of you that don't know, Thomas Jefferson initially drafted the Declaration of Independence. James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, to a small extent, wrote the Constitution of the United States before it was ratified, the original draft. And what a lot of people don't know is that Thomas Jefferson and James Madison were both Virginians. That's right. They came from Virginia. And their cohort in Virginia and mentor. See, a lot of people look at like Benjamin Franklin. Oh, he was an aged person, and a lot of the founders took a lot of he was wise in knowledge. And we even talk about that, Benjamin Franklin, oftentimes. But I have a couple of books here. This guy by the name of George Mason. There's an image of him. George Mason was a highly influential statesman from Virginia. That's one. George Mason, Forgotten Founder. This is another book that I've just picked up. I haven't read them yet. I just received them. But for those that don't know who George Mason was an incredible influence on the people that we give credit to our founding. And what a lot of people also don't understand is that the Commonwealth of Virginia was a foundational document, just like the Magna Carta, the Mayflower Compact were, in creating what essentially became our United States founding documents within the Declaration of Independence and ultimately the Constitution of the United States, as well as the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments that came out. Folks, I have a link in the show notes in the description. You can grab it. It's from the archives, the National Archives. Let me just point this out to you. Here it is. Oh, wait. Let me switch this over. Here it is. This is the Virginia Declaration of Rights. Now, I'm going to read a few of these, and I want you to take note of how similar these are to what we currently have in our Constitution and our Declaration. For an example, Section 1 of the Virginia Declaration of Rights. By the way, it was written by none other than George Mason, and it was adopted by the Virginia Constitutional Convention on June 12th, 1776. That's the Virginia Constitutional Convention. Here it is. Section 1, that all men are by nature equally free and independent and have certain inherent rights, of which, when they enter into a state of society, they cannot by any compact deprive or divest their posterity, namely the enjoyment of life and liberty, with the means of acquiring and possessing property, and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. Where does that sound? What does that sound like? Oh, that sounds like one of the first things in the Declaration of Independence, a part of the preamble. Huh. Then he continues. Section 2, that all power is vested in and consequently derived from the people. Now, where does that principle come from? Section 3, that the government is or ought to be instituted for the common benefit, protection, and security of the people, nation, or community. Of all the various forms and modes of government, that is best, which is capable of producing the greatest degree of happiness and safety, and is most effectually secured against the danger of maladministration. And that when any government shall be found inadequate or contrary to these purposes, a majority of the community has the indubitable, inalienable, and indefeasible right to reform, alter, or abolish it. In such manner shall be judged in most conducive to public weal or weal. Yeah, folks. Seriously. You want to know where the founders got a lot of their ideas, especially Thomas Jefferson? They got it from this guy, George Mason. A completely I'm going to be honest with you. I do not recall in all of my U.S. history classes, I do not recall ever even talking about George Mason at all. And yet it was his documents, his counsel, his guidance that helped to bring this country to form. He continues on. There's several others here. Section 5, that the legislative and executive powers of the state should be separate and distinct from the judiciary. That's a concept. The separation of powers. Yeah. And he continues here. He's Section 6, that elections of members to serve as representatives of the people in assembly ought to be free, and that all men, having sufficient evidence of permanent common interest with an attachment to the community, have the right of suffrage and cannot be taxed or deprived of their property for public uses without their own consent, or that their representatives so elected, nor bound by any law to which they have not in like manner assembled for the public good. Yeah. Here's a principle that power of suspending laws or execution of laws by any authority without consent of the representatives of the people is injurious to their rights and ought not to be exercised. Yeah. Section 8 covers things like capital and criminal prosecutions. A man has a right to demand the cause and nature of his accusation, to be confronted with his accusers and witnesses, to call for evidence in his favor, and to a speedy trial by an impartial jury of 12 men of his vicinage. And without unanimous consent, he cannot be found guilty. Folks, the Virginia Declaration of Rights came and developed a massive partition of our Constitution and the principles by which we hold dear today. We need to study this. We need to get back to our roots and understand this. There's a lot of documents that were created, but Virginia in particular, takes center stage in our founding. It may have happened up in Philadelphia, folks, but people like George Mason, like Thomas Jefferson, like James Madison, who came from Virginia, helped shape this nation. It goes on, talks about general warrants. It talks about the freedom of the press. It talks about, Section 13, that a well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people, trained to arms, is proper, natural, and safe defense of a free state. That standing armies in times of peace should be avoided as dangerous to liberty, and that in all cases the military should be under strict subordination to and governed by the civil power. This, folks, this document, literally, almost everything pulled from it is what created our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. Now, I also want to point out in the closing minutes here, and I'm going to go over a little bit, but in the closing minutes here, there is another document that was put together This one written by none other than Thomas Jefferson, which is the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom in 1786. Now, there are those people who are out there who say that Thomas Jefferson was an agnostic. He was a deist. He did not believe in God and government and so on and so forth. That he did not believe in mixing God and government. And yet here is a document written by him, passed by his home state of Virginia, that talks about clearly religious freedom. Jefferson drafted it. Madison secured its passing and adoption. And you sit there, there are people out here. I'm sorry, I'm going to take in a few extra minutes here. You guys, I'm going to hold you as a captive audience. There are people out there who believe that Thomas Jefferson and James Madison did not believe in the church being part of man's government. That religion and man's government should never be mixed, that they were entirely secular. They are not. They are not. And this is actually, this Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom is still part of the modern Virginia Constitution. It's been copied by other states, was the basis of the religion clauses in the Constitution's Bill of Rights, meaning the First Amendment. Both men considered that this bill, the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, was one of their greatest achievements of their lives. And he actually, Thomas Jefferson, directed that on his tombstone, he should not be remembered as the third president of the United States or any of the other high offices that he held, but as the author of the Declaration of Independence and the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, and as the founder of the University of Virginia. Now, I'm going to point out right here, he wrote this. If he was agnostic, if he was entirely secular, then why did he say this? Whereas Almighty God hath created the mind free, that all attempts to influence it by temporal punishments or burthens, or by civil incapacitations, tend only to beget habits of hypocrisy and meanness, and are a departure from the plan of the holy author of our religion. Folks, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to say this clearly. This country was built upon the idea of Judeo-Christian values. This was not a country that was built upon Muslims. This was not a country that was built upon anything with regards to, secularism or anything else. This country was built on the foundation of Judeo-Christian principles and values. I just cannot stress this enough. And if you were to go back and start to look at documents such as this and some of the founding documents and actually study American history, you would find that almost a significant portion of what you are being force-fed in the university system today with regards to the American founding is false. Is 100% false. So, there you go. And I just touched on the very, very tip of the iceberg here. That I touched on a very small part of what this is. I'm going to encourage you to go back and read. This is 250th anniversary, to go back and rediscover our nation's founding, rediscover the people that are a part of it, rediscover what this country is all about. And I'm going to encourage you to do that here. I'm going to encourage you to do that. I don't know, but I may come up with some other things and other topics as we approach the 250th anniversary as subjects within this, obviously within the American perspective. Anyway, that's it for me for this evening. Do me a favor. If you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. And once you are signed up and signed in, make sure that you search up the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to get notified every time that I go live. Also, too, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or a thumb sideways, sometimes even in an angle, across all my platforms, whether it's X, YouTube, Facebook, or, of course, the aforementioned Rumble. We will see you Monday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening and a great rest of your weekend. And good night, everybody.